All right, let's talk about something huge that's happening right under our noses. It's called de-dollarization. And look, this isn't just some boring financial news. This is about a seismic shift in global power, a secret war being fought with currencies that could change, well, pretty much everything.
I want you to just think about that for a second. What if, all of a sudden, the world just stopped using the US dollar? It sounds like something out of a movie, right? But for decades, the dollar has been the absolute bedrock of global trade. Now, that bedrock is starting to show some serious cracks. So, let's dig into what that could actually mean for you and me.
So, the first thing you have to realize is that what we're seeing isn't just a bunch of random accidents. Nope, this is a coordinated shift. And the speed at which it's happening is, well, it's pretty staggering.
I mean, just look at this timeline. This all happened in a 72-hour window, a 3-day period in February 2026. You've got Brazil and China, India and Russia, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Malaysia. We're talking about 7 major countries on 3 different continents, all making huge deals that completely cut out the US dollar. Billions of dollars in oil, weapons, you name it, all trading hands, and not a single greenback was used. That's wild.
So, let's be crystal clear. This is not a coincidence. You don't get this level of synchronized action by accident. This is a strategic, planned move. For years, de-dollarization was something people just talked about. Now, it's happening, and it's moving way faster than anybody thought possible. So what lit the fuse?
Well, that brings us to the real heart of the issue, the weaponization of money. See, this whole global movement didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was a direct reaction to one single earth-shaking event that totally changed how the world thinks about the dollar.
And that turning point was February 2022. When Russia invaded Ukraine, the response from the West wasn't just troops and sanctions in the traditional sense, it was financial, and on a scale nobody had ever seen before.
Western nations froze over $300 billion of Russia's central bank assets. Let that sink in. That's almost half of a country's entire national savings, money they earned selling their resources, and it just poof, vanished with the press of a button.
That sent an absolute shockwave through every capital city, from Beijing to Riyadh. The message was loud and clear. The dollar wasn't just a neutral tool for trade anymore. It was now a weapon of foreign policy. And it was a weapon that could be aimed at literally anyone who stepped out of line with Washington.
And just like that, the entire equation flipped. You know, holding piles of dollar reserves used to be the ultimate symbol of economic security. Suddenly, it looked like a massive vulnerability. For country after country, getting away from the dollar was no longer some political statement. It became a matter of pure survival, a global insurance policy.
But here's the thing, you can't just decide to stop using the dollar. The whole world is built on it. So if you're going to leave, you have to build something new to take its place. And that's exactly what's happening. Let's look at the new system they're putting together.
It's basically a 3-step playbook. First, you have bilateral swaps. That just means 2 countries agree to trade directly with each other, using their own money. Simple. Second, they're building new payment rails. Think of them as new digital highways for money, so they don't have to use the Western-controlled SWIFT system. And third, they're changing what they save. They're moving their national savings out of US government debt and into physical stuff like gold.
And here's a perfect example of that new financial plumbing. For decades, if you wanted to send money internationally, you had to go through SWIFT. It was the only game in town. But now, China has built its own version, called CIPS. And it's not some tiny experiment anymore. It's a fully working alternative that gives countries a choice they have never, ever had before.
And then you have the really big one, the BRICS unit. Now, this isn't a currency you'll use at the store. Think of it as a special bridge currency, just for settling big international trades. But here's the part that really makes people sit up and listen. Look at how it's backed. 40% by physical gold. In a world where most currencies are backed by, well, nothing but promises, backing a currency with gold is a direct challenge. It's designed to build trust from day one.
So, okay, a whole new system is being built, piece by piece. But what does all of this mean for the United States? Well, this is where, after decades of being on top, the bill starts to come due. See, for about 50 years, America has had this amazing benefit called the exorbitant privilege. Because everyone in the world needed dollars to trade, the US could just print more money whenever it wanted, run up huge debts, and borrow at super low costs. This meant cheaper gas, cheaper TVs, lower mortgage rates, all of it. In a very real way, the rest of the world was helping to subsidize the American way of life. So what happens when that privilege disappears? Well, history gives us a pretty good clue, because this story has played out before. No reserve currency lasts forever. The Spanish had their turn, then the Dutch. Then the British pound ruled for centuries. The rise and fall of world currencies is a predictable pattern. And thinking, oh, but this time it's different, well, that's usually a very dangerous bet.
The fallout is historically pretty predictable, and it tends to happen in three painful stages. First, as other countries start selling off U.S. debt, interest rates at home go way up. Your mortgage, your car loan, your credit card bill, everything gets more expensive. Second, all those trillions of dollars that were held overseas start flooding back into the U.S. economy, all chasing the same amount of stuff, which causes massive inflation. And finally, that puts the Federal Reserve in an impossible position. They have to make a choice, either hike rates into the stratosphere and cause a massive recession to save the dollar's value, or keep printing money and risk total hyperinflation. There's no good option.
Which brings us to the final and most important question. So, that's the theory, that's the history. Where are we right now? And what's coming next?
Let's just look at the hard data. As of late 2025, the dollar still accounts for about 58% of all global reserves. So yeah, it's still the king. But, and this is a big but, that number was over 70% back in 1999. The trend line is clear, it's consistent, and it is pointing down.
And here's the real kicker. This is what makes today so different from the past. When the British pound lost its top spot, the whole process took decades. It was a slow, gentle decline. But today, information, money, it all moves at the speed of light. That slow exodus that took Britain decades could be compressed into just 18 to 24 months. The pace is absolutely breathtaking.
And this isn't just some abstract theory. You can see it in the money flows. Look at this. China, Japan, and other major players have already dumped over $1 trillion worth of U.S. government debt in just the last few years. This isn't just rebalancing a portfolio. This is a structural shift away from the dollar.
So to wrap our heads around this, it's important to understand the end game. The goal for these countries isn't necessarily to trigger a sudden, chaotic collapse of the dollar. The goal is to build an alternative. It's about moving from a world with one financial superpower to a multipolar world with lots of options where no one country can pull the plug on another. And that leaves us right here with the final question. This shift is happening. The forces pushing it forward are probably too big to stop now. The only thing we don't know is how it ends. Will the dollar's 5-decade reign end with a sudden, dramatic bang? Or will it be a long, slow, quiet whimper? Honestly, nobody knows for sure. But what we do know is that the world is changing and the consequences of this secret war will be felt for generations.